everybody. I want to thank Abington Heights High School and the students for inviting me. After all these great speakers, you got a cartoonist. What's up with that? But I'll try not to ramble, which is the reason I brought my little roadmap here, because I tend to wander down various unrelated verbal footpaths on my way to my narrative destinations, which I guess is all part and parcel of the creative process. But I digress. I'm digressing right here. I'll attempt to stay on track for at least 15 minutes or so and talk about this thing that I do, which is called editorial cartooning. Or would that be political cartooning? The terms are usually completely interchangeable, and for most folks, I suppose the difference is probably a distinction without meaning. For what it's worth, I think the former is a subspecies of the latter. As a cartoonist who draws about political issues, I am by definition a political cartoonist. I can tell you that I believe I have one of the best and most selective jobs in the world. Seriously, now think about it. I get paid to draw cartoons poking fun at the President of the United States, the Governor of Pennsylvania, the Mayor of Scranton, and public leaders and officials all over the world. Has your principal done anything funny recently? I can do that. A well-done political cartoon can be the sharp end of the newspaper's editorial sphere, delivering a well-deserved sting beyond that of which words alone are capable. The legendary pundit and Baltimore Sun editor H.L. Mencken once proclaimed, "Give me a good cartoonist, and I can fire half of the editorial staff." I'm not saying that as a serious. I like editorial staffers. I really like having them around. I am among the latest practitioners of a craft that traces its roots back to the prehistoric cave paintings. My job is to tell a story, or more precisely, offer commentary. So, offer commentary in pictures with words along for the ride. So here's a little history going back. Many historians tab political cartooning's great granddaddy as William Hogarth. Another early luminary was Francis-Henri Daumier, whose 19th century secure pieces of the French monarchy landed in prison on obscenity charges. And this is one of the most famous characters of the French king Louis Philippe, and sitting on his toilet being fed the meager possessions of the poor down here in the world, right? And you can see the toilet above the toilet. So you can see the king was probably upset and tolerated with this. One of the most famous early American was done by Pennsylvania's own Benjamin Franklin. And this is appeal to unity as a revolution approach. And this is probably one of the most famous political cartoons in American history. You can find it in just about any history book in high schools across the country. Thomas Nast's scathing late 19th century cartoons for Harper's Weekly played an important role in bringing down Tammany Hall. 20th century American cartoons worked of great cartoonists like Herb Block of the Washington Post. This is a cartoon about the Nixon tapes during the Watergate scandal. I am a crook. The work of Australian import Pat Oliphant, who is still working today. The work of the late Jeff McNally, who died at a very young age, about 10 years ago. And that was a great loss for political cartooning. I just love his artwork. And the work right now of the current political cartoonist, the Washington Post, Tom Towles. I love his. He has a very simple, direct style, and I love his drawing of Mitch McConnell on the bottom. Reporter, photographer, and editor, first for a tiny weekly newspaper in Greenock, Kentucky, later down in Danville, Kentucky, which is a lovely little town. There's a small daily there. It was in Danville that my interest in cartooning came to the forefront. I managed to find work in the news art department of the Durham Morning Herald in Durham, North Carolina. Now, like most modern newspapers, most modern companies, the Durham paper spelled out in an employee handbook the conduct it expected from its employees. During one particular company meeting, I had an epiphany. I just had a realization of just how weird my job was. Our handbook made it clear that under no conditions would an employee be allowed to belittle or ridicule in a perceived way Anyway, based on their race, their gender, national origin, etc., etc., etc. Now, that's a lot, that right there is a lot of what political cartoonists spend their days ignoring. So in the course of my duties, it meant I committed a firing offense almost every day. But instead, I got a paycheck. Weird, huh? Now, in saying this, part of when you draw a political cartoon, the point of giving a cartoon is you're going to offend somebody. You're going to bore somebody's eyes. And this gets to the point of what happened recently, about 5 months ago in Paris, with the shooting, with the killings of the Charlie Hebdo offices. 11 cartoonists and journalists were shot and killed in this satirical weekly for its satirical depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. And while cartoonists around the world, myself included, condemn the event as a frankly insane attack on free speech and expression, I think it's necessary to draw a distinction between what Charlie Hebdo does, which is to ridicule for ridicule's sake, which ridicule can be a great leveler along across the panorama of human existence. And what I and many other cartoonists do, for us, satire and sarcasm and ridicule are simply tools used to attack hypocrisy, criminality, or corruption, regardless of religion, nationality, and so forth. It's an important distinction. And for example, this cartoon right here, I wrote the Prophet Muhammad with a sack over his head because he's embarrassed by the conduct of the militants, so the terrorists who were killing him in their name. Now back to our story. I write in Scranton about 10 years ago, and now draw about 5 to 7 full-color editorial cartoons for the paper. I have a couple of freelance clients, and I'm still down in North Carolina. But the bulk of my work is done for the Scranton paper. Most of it, I would say probably a third to a half of the cartoons that I draw in the course of a week are local, and we have some great material around here for political cartoons. We have some of the best gag writers that a cartoonist could hope for, especially down in Scranton and in Harrisburg. And a number of others deal with issues farther afield. And so this take a little while, and you can look at some of them. This is about the low voter turnout in the last election in Lackawanna County. This is Lackawanna County. I always look at the profile. It looks like a huge schnoz. This is for you, Ms. Dempsey. This is the heretofore unthinkable popular uprising against the expansion of the Keystone landfill in Dunmore, with one Louis A. Naples at the top as king of garbage. Mount Cashmere. I don't know if you remember the viral video last year of the little kid at Pike County Fair? Apparently, it was really fun. Well, it kind of reminded me of the mayor of Scranton, who was desperately trying to figure out a way to dig the city out of its hole without actually raising taxes on the people who live there. And he came up with the idea of the commuter tax, which eventually got shut down, but that turned into the apparent. Apparently, there's a problem with the pension fund, and apparently I'm the mayor, and apparently I've never been a mayor before, but apparently I connect people who apparently can't vote against me, and that's really awesome, apparently. I love Garfield Warbright. He is one of my favorites. He is my new, I love him. He's the best guy, best subject character since Joe Turner. The double dipping, the pension crisis in Scranton, which is really, Scranton faces some mountainous financial problems, and a lot of it has to do with the underfunded pension plans. This is the double dipper. This is Woody the Pooh with his head stuck in a honey jar. Now, every once in a while, there's a story that comes on. I can't have fun all the time with these stories. A story comes along that has a dimension of tragedy that you have to take a different approach with a political cartoon. One recent example was about a year ago, was the marathon bombing, Boston Marathon bombing. I wanted to do cartoons addressing the issues of terrorism, the terrorist threat in America, things like that. But the day after it is when you have to have a cartoon that expresses the collective national sense of sorrow and a quiet moment. And before you get down to the nitty-gritty of the politics. So I was trying to think what represents Boston. Paul Revere. This is the famous, iconic statue of Paul Revere in Boston. So I just did this instead, over here, this and his horse in the morning, in a mournful moment, following the bombing. The next day, I came back with a cartoon addressing America's never-ending marathon of dealing with terrorism threats. And I don't know if you can see this is the word threat, like a hamster wheel. The word terrorism, making that. I don't know, this is kind of a stretch, but I sort of like the composition of it. And then I later used the bravery of the first responders at the marathon to contrast with cowardly behavior of our elected representatives in Congress in dealing with handgun violence. Gun violence is one of my favorite topics dealing with in a cartoon. So I showed in the case of Boston, it showed the officer running toward the explosion, and then our members of the U.S. Senate running away from the bloodshed caused by gun violence. After Sandy Hook, this is another good example. Sandy Hook was terrible. The shooting at the Newtown, Connecticut. It's just a cartoon that ran the day after that. And then 2 days later, came back with a cartoon showing how the NRA guns control. Basically, the NRA's ability to shut down any sort of meaningful dialogue as far as regulation of handguns. And I've got all the nests going: Newtown, Aurora, Tucson, Portland. Actually, I think I had to cut it off because of the depth of the cartoon, but I don't know how many of you remember there was a killing at an immigration center in Abington, New York, just north of here, like about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Several people killed. This is the NRA, Wayne LaPierre. The NRA, the UN considered a UN global treaty on handgun control that was shot down. Well, actually, it was vetoed, and the three countries that stood against it were Syria, Iran, and North Korea. You know, the Three Stooges. The only other organization that came out against it, along with these guys, was the National Rifle Association. So, you are the company you keep. The mass collection of data, your cell phone data, Uncle Sam's keeping an eye on who you're calling. This came out, and I sort of used this to turning the Obama logo into a spying eyeball on Uncle Sam because of the Obama administration. And Edward Snowden, who is now hiding out he's the guy who leaked all the documents from the NSA, is now hiding out in Russia. But I find he could have found one other place where the U.S. law enforcement didn't touch him, and that would have been the Wall Street banks. John Boehner, this is probably on in 2010 after the Tea Party Republicans pretty much sort of grabbed control or managed to put a logjam in anything going on in the U.S. House of Representatives. And just through John Boehner as the lady of the tiger, or the speaker of the tiger. There was a House Speaker named Boehner who tried to be a tiger trainer. See, it's good. He went for a ride on the Tigers Inside. Could things get insaner for Boehner? See a lot of these cartoons. I like to think I came up with this one ideas a couple of months ago. I saw the clown car thing coming up with the Republican Party with all the non-serious candidates vying for the nomination next year. All aboard. The conservative media and the conservatives on Capitol Hill trying to make hay out of the tragedy in Benghazi. It was a terrible thing. Is it actually a scandal? I'm going to say no, but I think that because right now the reality that they found so far doesn't really rise to that. It's been got. Ted Cruz. I love Ted Cruz. I love Ted Cruz and I hate Ted Cruz. But this is thrown after his filibuster and after he managed to shut down the government. And so how the heck did we get his ego out of the building? Donald Trump. I mean, come on, guy. Actually, I love this guy so much. It's the only cartoon I've ever put myself in. Anybody in the newsroom would have recognized. I had a little soul patch at the time. I was fond of wearing my leather jacket, my fedora stuff. But Donald Trump, I've gotten a lot of good cartoons. I think he's every cartoonist's favorite character. Hillary Clinton and her magical email system hidden in her basement. She may not be hiding anything, but I can tell you one way. If you're a public official and you're looking at the public, you're saying, "Trust me, I'm not hiding anything." You're hiding something. You know? Barack Obama likes to play golf, and given all the problems in the world, who can blame him? This is another one of those cartoons where you morph. I love morphing the globe into a Titleist golf ball. And even he at the end, really, he's got to snap out of it. This is just in my version. Almost every cartoonist has done some version on the Hope, poster. This was mine. The hype is the empty suit with a little moth flying out through the top. The mess that is Iraq, or what used to be, and it's like the Iraq meltdown. I think I drew this about a year ago when ISIS was on the rise. Maliki, who has been the prime minister, was threatening a coup. Iran was rushing in to save the day. I mean, holy cats, how do we ever get this thing started? Dealing with this is after Russia had invaded Ukraine, and Russia has relations with Assad. And Assad is dealing with, you know, as a part of ISIS, is coming out of Assad, is coming out of Syria, which is going up in flames. And Obama's got to come up with an answer for this. So and he took a lot of heat in a press conference by saying, well, our strategy's up in the air. Yeah, it was. I think it still is in a lot of ways. I don't know what the answer is there. This is a cartoon I drew about this coalition he threw together. I love drawing things like this because it's just all the little parts. As the little flaming hoop, and Obama riding his unicycle, holding his sparklers, and he's got the Iraqis and the Turks on his shoulders. On top, you got the Shiites, the Sunnis, the Saudis, and I can't really tell who that is at the top, but they're juggling a horse. And the next guy, the little guys, and they're rolling with the drum roll, going, okay, everybody ready? And the countdown to Obamacare, the constant delays. So this is a quickie I came up with. I mean, a lot of times it's like this cartoon I literally came up with it like at 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's really. I mean, I will say, and I think it's the case with any, whether you're writing or whether you're painting or whether you're drawing, is the hardest part of the job is coming up with the idea first. I have any number of editors who come walking by my office saying, this guy doesn't look like he's working. You know, because I got my feet up at my desk and I'm looking at a blank white sheet of paper. You know, what am I going to draw? Once I come up with the idea, that's the easy part. I'd say drawing I draw everything on the computer now, probably takes half hour to like hour and a half, depending on the complexity of the drawing. But this is a cartoon that I actually came up with the last minute and bang it out real quick. Then it came out, I was very happy with it. So, and I think my time is up, speaking of time. So, thank you for having me.